Wokeism. It is a new term in the United States. You may not even know what it is, but you've probably heard a lot about it. You know, when you go onto Twitter and you see people with all those different things in their bio lines about pronouns and all these different things, like I identify as a meat popsicle today. All right, well, so that's kind of what we're talking about. It's this concept called critical race theory, CRT. You've heard about this in the news and the headlines, and it's an interesting concept that now even the CIA of our country is getting involved in. And so what I want to do is I want to show you this new recruiting video from the CIA that involves a Latina woman who is very nice, and she's giving us her story, but it's a little bit interesting. Not one of the videos that you would expect to be coming from a government entity that is responsible for international security and wiping out some of the toughest, most heinous criminals throughout the world. And we have a video like this. So I'm going to play it for you. But before we do, we want to do a little bit of heavy lifting. We got to learn about what we're talking about. What is critical race theory? Now, I'm going to go through an article from a guy named James Lindsay. I want to explain to you who he is. And I also want to just give you a disclaimer on this thing, right? This is an approach toward this concept from the right. This is from people on the right sort of side of the aisle who oppose this concept, who think that this is all kind of bizarre, right? That we're even going down this road and that it's not actually productive. So just caveat, right? A little bit of a warning there. This is coming from the right. If you want to look at something that's a little bit more fair and balanced, this is not it. This is a criticism, but it is a summation. So just clearing that up. All right. So here it is, new discourses. This I want to show you. It's called the critical race theory. And we're going to go through this quickly because right now this is a 2-page overview. So it is not a lot of material, which is why I picked this. And this was written just a few days ago by a guy named James Lindsay. You can see him down here. And I want to show you a little bit of background on who this guy is. Very interesting fellow. You probably have heard about him without hearing about him. So I want to introduce you to him. James Lindsay. In 2017, they published a hoax paper titled, content warning, "The Conceptual Penis as a Social Construct." Okay, so you're going, what? The conceptual penis as a social construct. You're going, all right, that sounds like a joke, right? Well, kind of. In writing the paper, Lindsay and others intended to imitate the style of what's called post-structuralist discursive gender theory, okay, which is actually a thing because you can click it on Wikipedia and go over there. The paper argued that the penis should be seen, quote, not as an anatomical organ, but as a social construct isomorphic to performative toxic masculinity. What does that even mean? All right, so the paper says, well, the penis is not actually, an organ. It is not an anatomical organ. It is a social construct that is isomorphic to performative toxic masculinity. That sounds like something you'd hear in college, right? After this paper, so they drafted this thing. After it was rejected by Norma, they later submitted it to Cogent Social Sciences, an open access journal that has been criticized as a pay-to-publish operation where it was accepted for publication. So they write this hoax paper that's a total joke, and this organization accepts it. Then in August 2017, Lindsay and others, they wrote 20 hoax papers, which they then submitted to peer-reviewed journals using several pseudonyms, as well as the name Richard Baldwin, a friend of Bo Hodgson, and a professor at Florida's Gulf State College. The project ended early after one of the papers, published in the Feminist Geography Journal, which is a thing. There's a feminist geography journal that exists. It's called Gender, Place, and Culture. It was criticized on social media and then questioned in its authenticity on the campus reforms. So they submitted 20 papers and it sounds like many of them got accepted. The trio subsequently revealed the full scope of their work in a YouTube video created and released by a documentary filmmaker, Mike Nana, which was accompanied by the investigation by the Wall Street Journal. By the time of this revelation, 7 of their 20 papers had been accepted. 7 were still under review and 6 had been rejected. One paper, accepted by a feminist social work journal, Ophelia, was a rewrite of Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf in feminist language. Okay, so this guy's just making a mockery of the whole thing. Tom Whipple of the Times wrote that academic reviewers had praised the hoax studies of Lindsay as, quote, a rich and exciting contribution to the study of the intersection between masculinity and anality. Somebody else wrote, excellent and very timely. And somebody else wrote, important dialogue for social workers and feminist scholars, talking about the social construct isomorphic to performative toxic masculinity of the male genitalia. And so Lindsay has named critical social justice, which he describes as his preferred name for the contemporary social justice movement, as his ideological enemy, and is a critic of wokeness, which he analogizes to religious belief. Columnist Kathy Young described Lindsay as an author with an anti-woke following. In 2020, he announced the intention to vote for Trump, citing illiberalism on the left as the reason. So very interesting guy, pretty hilarious that they did this and that everybody just accepted it. Just, okay, well, we're going to talk about performative toxic masculinity and the version of male genitalia. And somebody said just a very exciting work, very important to the contributions of feminist scholars out there. Outstanding. So he is very anti-woke. He is somebody who is really sort of opposed to wokeness. And I want to explain what this is. So in his article, as I mentioned, it's titled A 2-Page Overview of What's Called Critical Race Theory. And I want to go through it. So he gives us a couple quotes, starts off by saying, unlike traditional approaches to civil rights, which favor incrementalism and step-by-step progress, critical race theory calls into question the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and the neutral principles of constitutional law. What does that even mean? There is a lot there, and we could spend probably a whole show unpacking that, but let's do it quickly. You can see here's what it says. This comes from a book called Critical Race Theory, an Introduction, written by Richard Delgado and Jean Stefanasic. This is an introduction posted back in 2001. So they're saying, right, in normal society, when we're talking about civil rights, we have this thing called incrementalism, where we just sort of, move the ball forward slowly but surely. Back in the 1700s, we form a country, we've got, equal rights, except for a huge demographic of this country called the slaves and others. And it was not a good, not a good situation for those people on the outs, right? But slowly but surely, over time, over years, civil rights expanded, and slowly but surely people started sort of being brought into the fold. Civil War happens, we get rid of slavery, women get women's suffrage, the right to vote, and the list goes on, right? We have, gay marriage is now acceptable, approved by the Supreme Court, incremental improvements as time goes on. But what they're saying here is that this critical race theory is sort of meant to upend all of that, including things like the principles of constitutional law, including things like the liberal order and Enlightenment rationalism. So a lot of what we have in this country stems from the Enlightenment era, right? The 1700s, 1600s, after a lot of these philosophers, were sort of in existence. They influenced a lot of our founding fathers who drafted the Constitution and created America. So they're saying, well, okay, that's all sort of based out of this old way of thinking where it's incremental improvements. We don't want any of that incrementalism. We want to get rid of the entire order and recreate it. Critical race theory and theorists are highly suspicious of another liberal mainstay, namely rights. Okay, they don't really want those to exist. And again, this comes from Critical Race Theory and Introduction back in 2001. So let's go into the article. It says here, critical race theorists describe critical race theory as a movement, which is a strange theory of society designed to reinvent the relationships between race, racism, and power in society. So to do this, they begin with the assumption that race is socially constructed and that racism is systemic. Okay, we've heard a lot of these words. Society has created the concept of race. And because society creates the concept of race, it is systemic. And racism is sort of intertwined, interwoven into everything that we do. This means that they view racial categories as social and political fictions that have been imposed by white people on other people of color, especially blacks, and that the system upon which all of society operates on every level unjustly produces racist outcomes that favor whites and minority races that adhere to, quote, whiteness. Okay, we're seeing a lot of this, right? We saw, I think 2 weeks ago, there was a bill that was passing its way through Congress that didn't actually pass. And I think largely it was because every single Democratic person in Congress voted against it. Every Republican voted in favor of it. What was the issue? It was about stopping discrimination for Asian American students in higher education. Well, what do you think about that? I mean, is that white privilege? If you're an Asian person, you're doing well in society. Well, you're not white. But what they're saying is, well, you might have whiteness. Okay, because you're living in a society with all of these socially constructed, racist, systemic, components every which way you turn. Following, at the expense of the colored people, of people of color, excuse me, especially Latinos and even more especially blacks, because racism is a property of the system, which includes everything from policy to behavioral norms to manners of speech to what we consider true. Racism persists even if no individual or institution acts in a racist way or holds any racist beliefs. So, in other words, you can be racist because you live in a racist society, even if you are not racist. It is the way society operates that is racist, as can be determined by the fact that there are statistical differences in average outcomes by racial category. And so we've talked about this a lot. Remember how the word changes a little bit from equality to equity. It's difference between equality of opportunity. We all start at the same level versus equality or equity in the outcome, meaning we all get the same thing at the end of the day. No matter where we started, you can work your ass off, work hard, create a ton of value for society. Well, you've got a little bit more than the next person. And what we want to do is make sure that our society is equitable. We're going to equal those things out. And so this person over here, who doesn't really contribute much of anything, just kind of, knows that they're going to be taken care of because they have abdicated all of their responsibilities. And our government and society is more than happy to take those things up, lest they lose a prospective voter. So they have this person just handing all of their life over to somebody else, and the government is happy to take it. All right, let's continue on with this article. My clicker. I need a new battery. My clicker. All right, we're going to continue on with the article because all right, moving on. Critical race theory proceeds upon a number of dubious assumptions and by means of a variety of questionable methods, including racism is ordinary. Critical race theory holds that racism is the ordinary state of affairs in society. The question is not, did racism take place, but rather, how did racism manifest in this situation? So we go from asking ourselves, was that racist? To now racism is just there. Everything that we do, we sit down for dinner. Well, this was a racist dinner. Well, nothing happened yet. Doesn't matter. I'm in a restaurant, which is clearly something that exists in America. And America, as we know, was founded by white people. Therefore, every single thing has a little stain of racism built into it. Thus, racism is relevant to all interactions and everything else that happens according to critical race theory. And it is everyone's duty to investigate, expose, and disrupt the racism once it is identified. And we saw this over this past weekend with the Jeopardy guy. Did you see that story? There was a guy on Jeopardy. I think he won 3 different events, 3 different championships, and he held up a symbol on his shirt to sort of articulate 3, like I won 3. And somebody said that was a racist symbol, racist, and turned into this huge thing. And it was happening all over the weekend. This guy had to sort of issue an apology, and the whole thing was a problem. It's because everything is racist, and everybody has to root it out at every single turn. This is why everything you say or do or think or move or touch or smell suddenly now has a racist connotation to it. And we've seen that here right on this channel. We've talked about it a lot. Every single criticism of everything has a racial component under this theory, and it's actually written down somewhere. The imminence of racism. As a corollary to the above, racism is believed to be imminent in society, which means it's hidden just below the surface and everywhere, always according to critical race theory. Therefore, all acts of racism are not to be understood as isolated incidents by individuals or institutions, but as specific manifestations of the pervasive system that defines society. We also have interest convergence. What is this? Critical race theory holds that dominant racial groups like whites will not help more oppressed racial groups like blacks in particular, unless it is also in their own self-interest to do so. Therefore, racism does not go away, but is just reproduced in new ways, usually ways that hide it more successfully and require more work to identify the future through critical race theory. Therefore, racism doesn't get better, and in a sense, it gets worse over time because it gets harder to identify and call out. So we've got a duty to call it out. You've got an affirmative obligation to do it. You have to stand up anytime you see anything that even remotely crosses the line. You've got an obligation to go and get rid of it. Well, we're seeing more of that, right? Everywhere you turn, you're seeing it. Jeopardy guy and others. Once again, this article is from James Lindsay over at newdiscourses.com. We got 2 more pages, very short synopsis. Then I want to show you the CIA video. So go check out James Lindsay. Give his website a follow or a bookmark. Give him a follow over on Twitter. What else is inherent in critical race theory? We have motivated ignorance. What is this? Dominant racial groups like the whites are positioned as benefiting from the system of racism. Critical race theory assumes pervades everything, and therefore they have little to no motivation to challenge or to change it. Instead, they have motivation to intentionally ignore racism, which is willful ignorance, to maintain it, and then to rationalize it as justified, say by claiming success is the result of merit. Refusal to interrogate one's own, quote, white complicity in the racist system is often treated as a character flaw, like white fragility, which is the name of a book, by the way, and a feature of white privilege. This trait, together with the above, gives racism a permanence, according to critical race theory. And it's also a shield against any criticism. You actually can't say anything about this. And I've actually tried this on Clubhouse a few times, where I get into Clubhouse and I sort of get into the room and I try to ask some questions, and it doesn't go well. But the point is, every time you try to sort of push back on this, they say, no, that's just your white complicity. That's your white fragility. That is your white privilege. You are just being ignorant. You're not willing to ask yourselves the hard question. Isn't it true that you live in a racist society, you racist white person? You go, well, actually, I don't think so, because I wake up every day and I don't think that way. And they say, yes, you do. You don't even know that you think that way, but you do. And I say, no, but I don't. They say, that's your white privilege. That's your white complicity. And you're weak. And who the heck are you? You're not even going to take a look at yourself. You're disgusting. This is willful ignorance. You are the worst. I know. Structural determinism. Critical race theory also holds that the systems of oppression in society determine one's outcome in life. How would you like to live under this theory? When you just wake up every morning, you wake up and you go out into the world and you say, well, the system of oppression is going to define my life today. Everything is about the system. Everything is about what that person said to me, or what that business did, or what that waiter said, or what that guy did on the road that day, or that article whatever Tucker Carlson said is my life is contingent upon all of those different things. I have no free will. I have no ability for self-determination. I cannot self-actualize in any way, shape, or form, because everything that I do is a direct result of society and how society acts upon me. Can you imagine living your life that way? What a mess. And it's just contrary to all things that we know that are useful for human beings in terms of self-actualization. It's about thinking beyond your borders. It's about sort of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. It's saying, hey, society exists this way, and I don't like it, and I'm not going to play by those rules. I'm going to step outside of that. Here, according to this, sort of summation of this concept, everything is based on society. All of your current situation, your current status in life is a result of what society did to you, because you have no personal autonomy. Article says, therefore, people of color, especially blacks, are positioned by the allegedly white supremacist system to be kept down. And it is the deterministic power of those power structures, rather than individual traits like character or merit, that determine success or failure in life. Which is just a sad, it's just sad. I don't believe that is accurate at all. And there are entire demographics in our country that are being taught this. You're just a victim of whatever your current circumstances are. Okay. I was born in a whole different set of circumstances than what I'm in currently. And that is due to a lot of other things. If I would have been born and said, well, it's just the lot I got in life, I guess I'm just an alcoholic. Guess I'm just a kid with a dead brother. Oh, well, woe is me. Everything is somebody else's fault. I have no ability to do anything useful with myself because I am subject to the system. Ridiculous. It's not true. Look around. What else does this say? Authentic racial experiences. Critical race theory also holds that systemic racism creates identifiable racial experiences for members of all racial groups. Further, critical race theory is the only social theory in existence that properly understands how one's racial social position with respect to these power dynamics can be rightfully understood. Members of each racial category have authentic racial experiences, unique voice of color. The critical race theory holds that critically conscious, woke, or critical race theorist members of minority racial groups possess a unique voice of color that speaks to the lived experience of systemic oppression by race. This is another tool for asserting critical race theorists cannot be doubted in their declarations of their experience, quote, as a member of a particular race. And of course, identity politics. Critical race theory is unabashedly involved in identity politics in the sense of creating special interest groups and political coalitions out of racial identity groups. This tends to take the form of a small number of critical race theory activists speaking for certain racial communities, using the points above as justification. We've also seen this around our society a lot. And this is something I've commented about on the show regularly, saying, hey, at some point it may come down to it where both of these little factions or several of these factions are duking it out with one another, because there's only so much room. The pie is only so big. The Democratic Party only has so much money and votes and ability to sort of, take on the business of all these various multitude of different groups that exist in our society. And so if you've got, LGBTQ plus and, other alphabet letters, other permutations, all these different groups, because it starts to, to segment down, right? When we've seen this, I've posted some stuff on Locals about new pronouns and things that I don't even understand. It's like a foreign language to me because it's all whatever. But all right, so now you have to have a Democratic Party that's representative of 200,000 different individual niche groups that all have these little permutations that make them special relative to the other groups. How do you deal with all of that? Well, they got to cobble it together. They got to have this coalition, smash them in. And then at some point, if one of those groups says, well, but we are in disagreement with that, right? We do not agree with that because that opinion might help that group, but it directly hurts our group. You're going to have some fractionation happening there. Last clip from this article before we get to the video says, impact over intent. Critical race theory holds that if a critically conscious member of a minoritized racial group has experienced racism in some word or deed, then the correct explanation for what happened is racism. It cannot be questioned. This empowers hypersensitivity and victimhood seeking. Anti-liberalism. As can be read in the quotes at the top of the page, critical race theory holds that the philosophy of liberalism is in fact a racist system, because it creates conditions under which unique inequities in outcomes increase while misleading people to believe that things are more fair than they are, right? And remember, all of the Enlightenment or many of the Enlightenment thinkers were white people, right? They thought about these concepts that made their way into our governing documents. And now there are inequitable solutions. Some people have more money than other people. Some people have bigger houses. Some people have nicer cars. And it's rooted in systemic racism. Why? How do we know that? Because they came from Enlightenment thinkers back in the 1700s. Well, who were the Enlightenment thinkers back then? White people. Hello. Narrative and counter storytelling. Critical race theory favors the telling of stories, especially stories that challenge prevailing wisdom or reject established knowledge. They also seems like to support revisionist history, according to Mr. Lindsay. Says critical race theorists believe it is their obligation to rewrite history to tell it from the perspective of critical race theory, even if it's factually inaccurate. And then we have intersectionality. All forms of oppression by all forms of identity are linked into one broad, pervasive matrix of domination, thus necessitating solidarity across all forms of suppression. All right, so now that we know a little bit about what this is and where this is going and what's happening, I want to play for you a video from the CIA. Now, if you go to the CIA's YouTube channel, you're going to see that they have a lot of these videos. I did not watch most of them, but this one has been poking around the internet. It's got, at the time that we clipped this, you can see down here in the bottom left, it's got 1.9 million views. I just checked before I hopped on here. It's like 2.2 million views. And it's about a 2-minute and 18-minute video of a woman, a Latina woman, who is explaining why she's an officer with the CIA. She's about 36 years old from the video. And I want you to listen to this narrative and just, ask yourself, based on what we just read, what is this? Does this fit? Does this sound like this is what that is? Because it certainly does to me. And the other thing I want you to notice is listen to what this woman is talking about. Is there anything in this that is relative to her experience as an officer for the CIA, relative to her ability to save America, to be Jack Bauer or whatever? Or is this about who she is as a person and about maybe sort of about what the CIA is looking for recruiting? What type of ideology? Okay, so it's not about the woman here in the video. This woman is an actress, or maybe she's a real person. I don't know. But it's, she's in there for a scripted message to tell a story, to reach a certain demographic, to reach a certain audience. They didn't just make this on a flip phone behind a camera somewhere in a spare bedroom. This is the CIA. Okay, they are thinking this through. They've got teams of people well-versed in human psychology. They've got, they know what they're doing here. So the question is, why are they making this video? What do they is this the trend? Is this the direction that the CIA is going? That we're going to be having a lot of people who talk this way and think this way, and that this is how they sort of think American society operates? It's a good question. We're going to find out, but it certainly looks that to me. The second thing I want to just flag for you is in this video, this woman says something to the effect that my life is not a box checking experiment. This is not something, I don't look at me like you should just check the boxes. She's doing it for like 2 minutes and 18 seconds, as we're about to see. So let me share this with you. I have to click a couple extra buttons because, all right. So here's a video from the CIA. All right, so Faith just told me you can't hear. I don't know why that is, but let me try this one more time, and I think I can do it now.
When I was 17, I quoted Zora Neale Hurston's "How It Feels to Be Colored" me in my college application essay. The line that spoke to me stated simply, "I am not tragically colored. There is no sorrow dammed up in my soul nor lurking behind my eyes. I do not mind at all." At 17, I had no idea what life would bring, but Zora's sentiment articulated so beautifully how I felt as a daughter of immigrants then and now. Nothing about me was or is tragic. I am perfectly made.
Listen.
I can wax eloquent on complex legal issues in English while also belting Guayaquil de mis amores in Spanish. I can change a diaper with one hand and console a crying toddler with the other. I am a woman of color. I am a mom. I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I am intersectional, but my existence is not a box-checking exercise. I am a walking declaration, a woman whose inflection does not rise at the end of her sentences, suggesting that a question has been asked. I did not sneak into CIA. My employment was not and is not the result of a fluke or slip through the cracks. I earned my way in, and I earned my way up the ranks of this organization. I am educated, qualified, and competent, and sometimes I struggle. I struggle feeling like I could do more, be more to my 2 sons, and I struggle leaving the office when I feel there's so much more to do. I used to struggle with imposter syndrome, but at 36, I refuse to internalize misguided patriarchal ideas of what a woman can or should be. I am tired of feeling like I'm supposed to apologize for the space I occupy rather than intoxicate people with my effort, my brilliance. I am proud of me, full stop. My parents left everything they knew and loved to expose me to opportunities they never had. Because of them, I stand here today a proud first-generation Latina and officer at CIA. I am unapologetically me. I want you to be unapologetically you, whoever you are. Know your worth. Command your space.
All right. So, very interesting stuff going on here. And, I like people being proud of who they are and where they came from. I'm not saying that at all. I'm proud of who I am and where I came from too. There's no issues there. But I'm also not somebody who's working for the CIA, and I'm also not somebody who says that you can just be whoever the hell you want to be, right? Just come in and just do whatever you want, and CIA will have you, I guess. It's a little bit more concerning to me that the CIA is sort of recruiting these people that are wearing, the sort of a BLM flag, looks like right here, or the hand, the woke hand is right there, and you've got this woman who's using a lot of the woke ideology, the language. And here's a summation of those from Aisha Ahmad. Said, actual quotes from the new CIA recruitment ad says, "I am a woman of color," right? "I am a cisgender millennial." What? Nobody. Okay, it's great. I have been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. Okay, I'm intersectional. And says here, I think it's safe to say the contemporary American left has failed. It's like, okay, that's great. And she goes through and she says, listen, this is not an exercise in checking boxes. You just did that for 2 minutes. You just said, I'm a woman of color. I'm a cisgender millennial. I've got generalized anxiety disorder. I've got 2 kids. I got all this, right? All on and on. You're checking a bunch of boxes and then telling us not to check boxes. So very strange behavior, in particular for a government entity like the CIA. I mean, if she wanted to, start a vlog or something like that, okay, like all of that stuff's relevant to that, but not really for the CIA. Okay. All right. Well, here's Glenn Greenwald says, what this also shows is this type of politics fixated on cultural identity poses no threat whatsoever to the institutions of authority. Very interesting point, as Glenn always comes up with. To the contrary, they love it. It's easily co-opted, and the liberal obsession with this stuff means they're not focused on how power is wielded. I think it's a very interesting point, right? If you're in a position of power, what better thing to do than to just let all the peasants, all the plebeians down there, all the little people, just go duke it out about your genitals and about your genders and bathrooms and locker rooms. Nobody cares. Okay. You people care about it because you think it's the most important thing in the world, because you've been taught that every single thing in society is based around that identification. You say, I'm a whatever, this, that, this. Okay, great. Mash all of those things together. Now, anything that happens to me in the world that I don't like, guess what? Guess why that is? Well, it's because the world is oppressive. They are ruining my ability to be who I am, to live my authentic life, because of their oppression, their white power, this male patriarchy that we're also infested with. Right? That's okay. Think that all you want. You can think that all day long. Just keep buying your Apple products. Keep going to Starbucks. Keep wearing your mask. Nobody cares. Have fun. Go hog wild. Cancel everybody you want. We don't care, because we're the CIA, and we're going to continue to do whatever we want to do. We're the elected senators. We're Mark Zuckerberg. We're Jeff Bezos. We are Jack Dorsey. All of you people can just, bicker amongst yourself about your genitals and your pronouns. We're going to just keep running things the way that we want to run them, while you waste your time and your manpower dealing with stupid stuff. That's what Glenn Greenwald is talking about. It says specifically, well, yeah, they don't care. They're going to kill themselves over this woke culture, and nothing's going to change in society. It causes more division, not any more solutions, in my humble opinion. All right, we've got LT13 in the house. Says he was on Rogan and they published a bunch of hoax papers that were peer reviewed. Yeah, I think he was on Rogan twice. I think that's where I first came across him, but it didn't sort of resonate with me when I listened to him. And those hoax papers are hysterical. We have Sharon Quidney in the house. Says, read the penis not being an organ. Here's another example of wokers seriously in need in some education of basic science. I guess they don't believe in anatomy the same way they don't believe in genetics. It's hilarious. I mean, because you could see this. Like, I took a class in college called Women in Other Cultures, I think it was. It was one of those classes you had to take, right? I needed that letter. It's like a C. When you graduate, you have to have an A class, a C class, and I don't mean grades, but it's a certain designation. Like, I needed a cultural credit, so I had to go take a class that was cultural. All right, so I picked one that worked in my slot, and I was the only male in the entire class. Probably 70 women. Started out with 3 men, and then they dropped out after like the first week because it was a disaster. And it was a disaster. It was so eye-opening, but it was sort of the opening salvo of a lot of these theories. I was shocked at what I was hearing, but it was also hysterical. I learned a lot, and it really left a mark on me. But yeah, this is exactly what that professor, she would have loved this. Oh yeah, the male penis is a total fiction. It's not even an anatomical. It's it is. It's a figment. It's an idea, just like Antifa. The penis is an idea, just like Antifa. Oh my God. We have Flux in the house. Says, how will the laws have to change with all the changing language? Our language has been so changed drastically that the layman could never reasonably conclude the same thing. It's a good question, Flux. I don't really, I don't know what the laws are going to do. Z, zim, zers, zimmy, zimmy, zam, 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 dim, doop, 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 beep, bop, beep, scattins, boop, dee, da, day, right? All in the law, because nobody knows what the heck is going on. So, at some point, the courts are going to have to flesh some of this out, but we're not quite there yet. Next up, we got Ryan. Says, kudos for reading through the literature defining critical race theory, decapitalization intentional. I don't think I could do that without getting an overwhelming bout of nausea. Defining critical race theory. Yeah, it's really bizarre. It's like a whole different way of thinking, but it's extremely powerful. I mean, I got to give them credit. The people who designed this theory, extremely powerful, because you can use it as a shield against any criticism at all, like anything. Oh, excuse me, sir, you just cut in front of me. You cut my line. I'm standing in line. You just cut in front of me. They turn around and say, excuse me, you racist white person, right? Because everything is systemic, because racism is intertwined on everything. All right. Sharon Quinney says, and the anti-racist, anti-whiteness wokers are totally racist. Sharon Quinney says, all this wokeness is total communist indoctrination and struggle sessions. It's communist oppression and brainwashing techniques. Yeah, and moral crises, right? They're creating these things where everybody has to be up in arms. And if you're not up in arms, you're a bad person. You got to get with us. You got to put on the mask and get out there with us and rally. Otherwise, you're just as racist as the other people were speaking against. Farmer's daughter says, how are we supposed to take these people seriously? Scary that they have so many brainwashed. Fortunately, we are seeing some pushback. Hopefully it will continue. Yeah, I think it will. I think more and more people are going to recognize that as people try to use this stuff, right? If you are in a relationship with somebody else, or a business relationship, or go to lunch with somebody and they are talking this way and you are not comfortable with that, and they are comfortable with that, and they're not comfortable with you not being comfortable with how they talk, it's just better not to hang out with each other. Just okay, right? You just separate. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see sort of echo chambers really develop. You're going to see greater divisions. The woke critical race theorists, I think their concept here is they want to accelerate a destruction of the current order. They want to make sure that all of the current system that is systemically racist is gone, because if it's systemically racist, it's a bad system, which means it has to go away. So they want to eliminate it. How do they do that? By accelerating the division in society, by saying every time that I open my mouth, I'm a white racist. All right, that's fine. You can say that all you want, but I know that's not true in my heart. And I know I don't believe that about certain people. You can say that I do. You can say that society makes it so that I do, but I know in my heart, I know in my soul that I don't. So say it all you want. I don't care. And, eventually that's going to be the norm. People are going to continue to say that. Anybody who pushes back against these wokeists is going to be labeled a racist and somebody who's dangerous or a libertarian. We saw that a lot of that language is sort of minimizing a little bit the further and further away we get from January 6th. But we saw that was the narrative that was being drafted. Anybody who speaks out against the government, anybody who's a libertarian, even according to the former CIA director, John Brennan, all are dangerous people and all need to be monitored and sort of kept tabs on because of that danger. And what's going to happen, I think, is people will slowly start to just segment themselves out. All of the wokeists can go over there. All of the free speech people can go over here, and we'll see what happens, right? That's where people start to get concerned about the country dividing to a degree where they start talking about secession and civil war. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that once enough people conglomerate themselves into the woke culture, they're going to realize it doesn't work. It's not functional. You can't even do anything productive when you're having those conversations because everybody's offended about literally everything. I mean, it's like take high school where everything that you say to Becky turns into a little, secret that spreads around like wildfire at the high school campus and everybody's angry at each other. It's like high school drama. It's going to be like that with woke culture. Somebody, oh, what did you call me a bro? Did you call me a bro? I'm not a bro. My name is Robert, and that's offensive to me. It's all of those types of little microaggressions all over the place. How can you get any business done if everything you say is offensive to somebody else? You can't. So at some point, people are just going to say, enough of that. I'm not liking living in this bizarro world. I'm going to go back to reality land where not everybody is offended at every drop of the pen. Next up, we got seen and unseen. Couldn't hear the sound the first time, but caught you saying F. Thank you for making me laugh really hard and actually out loud. Did I say that? Sorry about that. Yeah. I try. Sorry about that. Content warning. I said the F word. We have Joe Snow in the house says, you're proud of who you are and where you came from, yet I've never heard you describe your heritage or your race. Yeah, because I don't feel the need to, because I don't feel like everything that happens to me in this world is oppressive. But that's just my white privilege speaking, right? That's just me, obviously being so fortunate for being white, even though I got a laundry list of victim Olympics events that I could compete on. Okay. A lot of them, but I don't choose to do that because it's not a useful way to live your life. I am not interested in waking up every morning trying to calculate and quantify how much the universe has wronged me in that particular day. Okay. I used to live that way. I used to wake up all the time like that and go, I got to do this and I got to do this. And I'm so, miserable because I was under the weight of alcohol. I had a lot of internal, stuff going on in my head. I was trying to figure my life out. So I went through a period of darkness and I had to grind through it to come out the other end a better man, a better person. And as part of that equation, as part of that realization, it was this idea that, yes, there are certain things in my life over which I am powerless. I have no control about it. And for those things, I got to just accept that powerlessness. I have to just accept that the world is going to continue to world no matter what my will, no matter what my intentions are. Once you can kind of accept that, you live in your hula hoop a little bit more. Anything that's inside the hula hoop is my business. Anything that's outside of the hula hoop, none of my business. And you can have a little bit more peace and clarity in your life versus the opposite. Me waking up every day saying I'm oppressed about everything. Everything that every person in this world does is personally offensive to me. And now I deserve reparations for that. I deserve restitution because somebody took a privilege away from me that should have been mine because of something, people did, generations ago in creating this country. Suddenly sort of, has wound its way into your life, and I'm responsible for it. I choose not to do that. Okay. I'm proud of my race. I'm proud of my heritage. I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of my Italian background. I'm proud of everything. I'm proud of my life. I'm proud of my world. I'm proud of your world. I'm proud of our society. I'm happy that people are happy about who they are and where they come from. That's fine. When you use this as a sword to go and attack other people, that's when I have a problem with it. When they come out and start saying, "Oh, you can't even express an opinion because it's white privilege, it's white, whatever fragility, it's whiteness, it's multiracial, whatever." It becomes a sword, and that limits your ability to converse. Once you lose your ability to speak, that's a big problem. That's why our First Amendment is the First Amendment. It's that important. And what I'm seeing in terms of this critical race theory seems like it is intended to nip the conversation in the bud. It's intended to silence people lest they be racist and identified accordingly. Underscore Shade says, modern day suffrage of women for new roaring 2020s games. Oligarchy money then, nothing is new under the sun. Modern day suffrage of women for the 2020s games. Underscore, I don't know what you're asking. Modern day suffrage. That suffrage is the right to vote. Do you ever see that man on the streets? I forget who did it. I forget. It may have been a YouTuber. Went around on the streets and said, "End women's suffrage" with a sign. End women's suffrage. And then he had a petition. He was asking women to sign this. Hey, I'm just here on the man on the streets. We're here to end women's suffrage. There's a lot of women's suffrage going on in society today. We want to end that. You agree? Oh yeah, totally. I'll sign it. Right. For those of you missing the joke, it's the right to vote, suffrage. All right. We got Norovirus says, weren't you trying to get back to monetized status? You recalculated your odds after this segment. Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Noro. Look, I don't think that anything that we're talking about here breaks the lines. Really, I don't think it's hate speech. I don't think that that it's dangerous or harmful. These are educational conversations that I think are well within YouTube's guidelines and content policies, including their monetization policies. Nora, we're following the rules, but I'm not holding my breath anyways. I think that YouTube, may never let us back in the playground, but that's okay. All right. We have another question comes from Eclectic Prophet in the house. Says, Rob, you realize this parallels the Chinese Cultural Revolution, don't you? I do see some similarities on that. And I've referenced, Mao and a lot of that here. I've actually been to China. And so, so I have some perspective on this topic. And it does leave me a little bit concerned that we're sort of gobbling this concept up at the pace that we are. Everybody is really excited about it. And we already know China owns most of the country anyways, including the politicians. So great questions. A little bit of a spicy segment there, right? Wasn't that a little bit, oof, yikes. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's important. We have to talk about this stuff. This is free speech. We got to push back on some of this. Some of the other topics, maybe we kind of, don't talk about here, but this is very important. This is foundational. If we don't have the ability to speak freely and communicate and exchange ideas, we're in big trouble. And there are people in this country that want that to be the reality. I don't.